Hello everybody. A couple of years ago I went up to Scotland on one of my regular review trips where I get together a bunch of petrol heads who are happy for me to test their cars, and this included a selection of classic muscle cars, sports cars, supercars and even the odd 4x4. But the vehicle that got by far the most views of all of them was my accountant's Volvo XC70. Unknown to me and him, this is a car that has a real following. And I am happy to say that he still has that car, but he is currently thinking that maybe it is now the right time to move it on. But today I am driving another XC70 and instead suggesting that maybe the way forward is instead sideways. This is a Volvo XC70 T6. So, for those who don't speak Volvo, what exactly is an XC70 T6 and what makes it so remarkable? We'll start with the XC70 bit. This is a car based on the third generation of Volvo's V70 platform. That's where the second half comes from. But the first, XC, stands for cross-country, and it is roughly analogous to Audi's Allroad. So it's based on the regular estate car, but is slightly lifted with a slightly different body style, and it's designed to be a little more year-round practical. This is the reason that it appealed to my accountant, because he lives north of the border and does frequently experience severe rain, snowfall, etc., etc. And having a more rugged and dependable car is a very good idea. This generation was introduced in 2008, was facelifted in 2011 and discontinued in 2016, being replaced by the V90 based cars. These are built on the Volvo P3 platform, which unlike its P2 predecessor then had a significant amount of Ford influence. But still, from in here, you wouldn't really know that because it still feels very much Volvo to me. And the only reason that I recognise any of these parts isn't because Volvo stole them, but people stole them from Volvo. So the wing mirror switches here were used in the likes of many an Aston Martin and Jaguar, even until fairly recently as it happens. Much like its predecessors, the idea of this car was to be a somewhat more premium alternative to the likes of your Ford and Vauxhall, but maybe not quite as upmarket as a Mercedes, BMW, Lexus or Jaguar. And at the time this car was made, the company was under Ford ownership as part of what they called their Premier Automotive Group, which also featured Jaguar and Aston Martin. This specific example is a 2010, that last one I drove is a 2007, so both are examples of the pre-facelift, with this one being fairly late, but the two otherwise being fundamentally very similar, with one notable exception, and that's to be found up front. Because where the other is the classic Volvo 5-cylinder engine, a diesel, a very popular choice in its day, this instead is the far lesser spotted straight 6. And yes, that is a transversely mounted straight 6. And I think the last time I saw one of those, it was under the bonnet of another Volvo, the mighty V60 Polestar, and the two engines are very, very closely related. Out of the factory, this was a 3-litre with a single turbocharger, making 285 horsepower and 295 pounds-feet of torque. That's 400 newton meters. It is a relatively unstressed unit. As part of the facelift, the engine did get a slight power boost by 20 horses, taking it up to 305, but this one is also now Polestar optimized, meaning both the gearbox and engine have been remapped. So it makes 320 horsepower and torque is up by 20% to 480 newton meters. The gearbox, I believe the only choice for the T6, is a 6-speed automatic, and the car comes with all-wheel drive as standard, a Haldex-based system. In terms of modification, beyond the Polestar optimization, this car has nothing added to it to improve the performance. But Phoenix, its owner, has done a few things to alter both the looks and the comfort. First off, he's fitted a set of 19-inch wheels to it to replace the 18s it came on, and these are genuine XC70 wheels, which could have been specified from the factory, but not that many people did. He has then fitted a set of marginally larger tyres to the car. They're just 235 wide, but 55 profile, and when he did that, he found that the car did start to rub a little bit. And so he then fitted a lift kit, which was advertised as a 30mm lift, but in fact raised the car by more like 40mm, giving it now, I am told, the same ground clearance as a Land Rover Defender. Now that's not the same as saying this is going to be as capable off-road as a Defender, but still, for I think the vast majority of daily uses, I am sure this is going to be more than capable. It would, I am sure, be the perfect companion for some camping or perhaps a festival, because not only do you have the all-wheel drive and the ground clearance, but you've got a nice amount of space in here with room for 4 adults, or 5 if you so desire. Rear space in particular is improved over the previous generation, which was a little on the tight side. The boot is a very good size too, and these things will make it not just perfect for your music lover, but also parents, dog parents, and anybody else whose job or life takes them places they maybe are not so familiar with and that could be a little bit demanding. Phoenix himself does a lot of traveling. He has a motorhome and regularly goes away for a few weeks at a time, but if he's not going to be away for quite so long, he often takes this because it's still big and comfortable enough that in the back he can chuck down a couple of mats and get a good night's sleep in it. He really likes this car. In fact, he said to me that the reason he wanted this car is because when the first generation XC came out, he looked at it and thought, there's just something quite cool about that. And I assure you, he really isn't your average pipe and slippers Volvo person either. Previously, he had a Lancia Delta Integrale, so he loves driving. And he enjoys driving this. And I can see why, because it's actually quite good. The last Volvo that I drove in real time about 2 or 3 weeks ago was the second generation V70R, and that's supposed to be a good driver's car, but in reality this is a lot better, and I know you probably wouldn't expect that, so allow me to turn around, put my foot down and explain to you exactly why that is. First off, that engine. The old V70R had a 5-cylinder turbo. This has a 6. And it's not just better because it's one more. It's got a lovely spread of torque and power, and whether you're in manual or automatic mode, the gearbox actually behaves fairly well. Certainly a step on from the 5-speed auto in that older car, although in its defense it did later get a 6-speed offering. The big difference I think between the two really is the torque. That one was limited to about 258 pounds-feet on account of the gearbox, so some 300 newton meters. This then having the 480 just makes it that little bit more athletic all of the time. That means when you're not on it, it is just that much more enjoyable. Next up, the steering. It's got a really nice weighting to it. The last one, it just didn't work quite so well. It's very nice, very consistent. Once you do begin to pile on the speed, it does acquire an air of vagueness. There's a hint of VW about that. Low speeds very promising, high speeds no promise delivered. But still, I like it. It's nice. It gives me a sense of connection with the road. And the suspension, I really like that. Now you've got 3 modes here because this car is equipped with Volvo's 4C system, which is their way of saying adaptive dampers. I'm told not everybody likes that system because it does have a habit of breaking, and when it does, if you want to repair it correctly, it is expensive to fix. However, between the settings you will notice a difference, but much like the last XC70 I drove, which also had it, and also the V70R, the difference between comfort, sport and advanced, it just isn't as big as you would expect it to be. And I think that's from sort of both ends really. The comfort genuinely is comfortable, and that to me really is the mode to drive this car in. It's lovely, it's fantastic, and apparently this is something that did get improved when the lift kit went on. The car just lost a little bit of its edge, and that's understandable, but I think actually in a car like this also beneficial. I'm not really worried about ragging it every single corner of every single day, and so I'm not really going to mourn the loss of a little bit of precision in the bends. However, I do appreciate the extra comfort. That V70 in particular, its weakness really was the suspension, because it was both wallowy and crashy, yet still not particularly precise. And while this also isn't particularly precise, as you begin to pile on the speed, you can feel the thing starting to become a little bit vague, it is at least then comfortable the rest of the time. Then, once you've had your fun, you do begin to appreciate all of the other things that this car has to offer, including a typical Volvo hallmark, these brilliant orthopedic seats. I absolutely love them. You drop yourself into them and you just go, oh. Whenever I'm up in Scotland visiting my good friend Dom, he's got a few different cars available, it's always the Volvo that I want to go out in, because you know what, it's a treat to be driven, full stop, and it's even more so a treat to be driven in something comfortable. And the Volvo really is, you just drop into it and go, oh, this is so nice. And even better, these seats are both heated and cooled. And cooled seats are one of those things you think are an awful gimmick until you've had a car with them, and then you never ever want to live without them. Love them. I also really like what Phoenix has done with the interior of this car. It originally had aluminium trim for these pieces and the ones around the air vents and the like. He's then replaced it with a natural wood. Now these are original Volvo pieces, however when he got them he felt they were a little bit too dark, and the reason he got them was because he wanted to brighten up this interior. This, unlike Dominic's car, has dark leather in it. It's got a light headliner but still got privacy glass in the back, and so it's a touch depressing in here. He wanted to do this to make the place feel a bit cheerier, but to try and get that warmth that he wanted, what he did was took the original factory piece, sanded it back, and then applied a teak oil to it, leaving it with a very nice texture and also a slightly lighter finish. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. Every single birthday I have, wood interiors become a little bit more appealing. Maybe that's why old people buy so many Morgans. The older you get, the higher percentage of wood you want in a car. The car naturally already sat a little higher than its V70 sibling, but this with the lift kit sits higher again, and it gives you a really nice commanding view of the road. You can see a reasonable amount of that bonnet, not masses, but it's still a fairly easy car to place. Visibility out is okay. This B-pillar is a little further forward than I would like it, but it's not horrendous. You've got plenty of adjustment in the seat and the steering wheel. You've got a nice little center console down here, which is classic Volvo of the period. The stereo is even half decent. Press the button and it tells you you've got Volvo high performance sound. Not sure it's an upgrade, but it's okay. This car would have originally come with a sat-nav, which would have popped out of the dash here. However, because it's an old, janky and today useless system, Phoenix has made the very sensible decision to replace it with a speaker grille, which you would have got had you not specified the sat-nav. He, like most people, just uses his phone for navigation. Even if this was a European market car, the nav would have been fairly useless, and this being Japanese, it is completely pointless. And so I think he's very wise to have gotten rid of it. One thing that did throw me though is this dash, because I got in the car, looked at it and went, oh, hang on a minute, this isn't like Dominic's car at all. I'm sure his doesn't have a digital dash, and his doesn't. This apparently was done when the car was imported. They retrofitted a more modern dash to it, maybe to do the KMH to MPH conversion, I don't know, but in any case, it looks great. It is again a factory item, just from a slightly later model, 2014 I believe. It's nice, it's clean, easy to read, gives you plenty of information, and it looks good too. But one of those pieces of information is the economy. And that's not so good. And I'm told one reason that even today, a lot of people aren't so sold on the idea of the T6. Presently, that economy gauge is indicating an average of 19.1 mpg. Granted, we have been playing around with the car stopping, turning around, accelerating, doing all sorts of stuff today, and that's never going to give a particularly good average. Most of the time, it's more like about 23 to 25, and on a run, it can get just over 30. But those aren't spectacular figures, and any diesel will certainly beat it. But today, these cars do have an awful lot going for them. Whereas 5 to 10 years ago, I would have said that actually the diesel does make a lot of sense because it's got even more low down torque, economy, and it's just a good engine. Today, they're no longer ULEZ compliant, with very few exceptions, the really late ones, and those command a significant premium. And this engine, I think, is even lovelier than the diesels. It is also surprisingly affordable. You see, I did a quick check of Auto Trader this morning, and the XC70 is in general a fairly rare beast, but I couldn't find a solitary example of a T6 for sale, or even the regular 3.2, which is probably really, really rare. Instead, there were simply examples of both this and the previous generation, in fact, more of the second than the third, and they were powered chiefly by different diesels. And the most expensive of all of them was about £6,500. So I figured, with this being Japanese and the import thing usually adding a bit of a premium, it being a very desirable engine, and this particular car being in excellent condition, mileage is around 90,000 or so, it'd be a maybe 15 grand car? But no, apparently it's worth more like 10 to perhaps 12, depends on the day, the buyer, and a few other things. And that, I think, makes it pretty darn good value. And I think there are other benefits too. You see, this is a car that has been clearly very well looked after, and certainly while here, enthusiast owned and maintained. And that means that in the year and 10,000 miles that Phoenix has had it, nothing has gone wrong. It is currently due a service, and hopefully that won't be too bad. It is going to the XC70 guru, who is, I'm told, very busy but also worth waiting for. Incidentally, I'm also told that the XC70 owners group is a very nice and unusually friendly one. So if you're from there, hello! Hope you liked my review of your car. But the point I'm getting at is that the cheaper examples of the car, the diesels, the higher mileage ones, the ones that have had harder lives, they're getting to that point where they're requiring quite a bit of money spent on them. Dominic, for example, has spent some £2,500 on keeping his car in good condition, because though he may be an accountant, he is, I think, a petrol head first. And if, because it has been enthusiast owned, it also winds up being a touch more reliable than a diesel, well, really, it's a no-brainer then. And ultimately, any car that keeps somebody from buying a fully fledged SUV, I am very, very happy to see. And so, 2 years on, the XC70 still gets a big thumbs up from me. So, thanks to you all for watching, thanks to Phoenix for bringing his car out. Don't forget, hit the like button, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and if you've got a Volvo you'd like to see featured on the channel, please drop me a line. My email address is in the description of every single video. I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.